The whine of my supercharger pumping compressed air into my engine's intake manifold was louder than the rapid beating of my heart. I was surprised that my heart could even beat in this state. The tears streaming from my eyes made it difficult for me to see. I thought I should slow down before I upended the only thing in this world I could call mine. When my speedometer needle returned to the readable zone, I heard the sirens again. I guess I thought the cops would give up when I went over 140 mph. There was no luck here. Let it all go to hell, I thought. I stopped on the side of the road. Let them take me to prison. Maybe time in prison will help me get away from the nightmare that my life has become. The cop stopped next to me. Strange, but he did not take out a gun, but simply walked up to the car. "Jesus, Grant," he blurted out. "Do you realize how fast you were going?" It was Fred Lively. Fred and I grew up together. We were friends most of our lives until he became a cop. I was wondering what effect it would have on friendships if I became a known speeder today. I guess I should say I became a felon because in some states, including mine, driving over 150 miles an hour on a public road is a felony. "What's happened?" he asked. Fred was in the hospital earlier when I got there. It was hard to believe, given my current condition and appearance, that today began as the happiest day of my life. I was in the hospital overnight after the birth of my third or first daughter, depending on how you want to count it. I was sent home last night because I was there all day and all night. There were complications with the birth. Nothing life-threatening or life-changing, just a few problems, as they said. Problems may have arisen because my wife, Bonnie, was over 35. It turned out that Brandy, our child, had an inguinal hernia. It wasn't really serious, but it required surgery. And although surgery on a newborn seems really scary, it happens more often than people think. This is especially true now that more children are being born to older mothers. Older is anyone over 30, and my wife is definitely in her 30s. She's 36 actually, and has never been the healthiest person I know, but I love her like there's no tomorrow. I got up and dressed for the occasion today in the t-shirt I ordered to show my pride. Now when I look at her, I understand that she is simply showing my gullibility and stupidity. The t-shirt was the same bright yellow color as my Mustang. It had a big smiley face with its tongue sticking out. Under the smiley face and on the back of the t-shirt was written, "My name is Dad." Since I was a pretty conservative guy, I would never wear anything that bright. Even the color of my car was unusual for me. I was looking for a black Mustang when I bought it, but after I drove this car, I just couldn't return it. Anyway, as I sat in my car and cried, I realized that I, not the t-shirt, was the joke. I was the only one who could be ridiculed here. "I remember when my youngest was born a few years ago," Fred said. "I realized that I was tied up for at least 18 years. I had 18 years ahead of me of paying for everything and putting myself last. 18 years of putting my dreams and desires on the back burner. I went a little crazy." He looked at me as if he knew what I was going through. "I got really depressed and had to see a psychiatrist," he continued. "And then Grace and I weren't having the best time either. I was going through the male version of postpartum depression. It doesn't even have a name, but a lot of guys go through it. I just don't understand how you can suffer from this. You've been waiting so long for this baby. You and Bonnie are two of the most in love people I've ever seen. I guess anyone can relate to that, right?" I said nothing. I just wiped my eyes. It was embarrassing to let another person see me with tears running down my face. "Bonnie is really worried about you leaving the hospital like that," he said. "Why don't I escort you back?" "Fred, I just want to go home to collect my thoughts," I said. "If you allow it, I just want to go home and think. I promise to drive below the speed limit. You can even accompany me if you want." "No need, Grant," he said. "See you later. Be careful." He put on those weird mirrored sunglasses that only cops wear, got back into his police car, and drove back in the direction of the hospital. I drove up to my house and stopped the car. I walked into the house I had shared with Bonnie and our two girls for the past 11 years. I was 23 and Bonnie was 25 when we moved here. I have known Bonnie and Franklin for 11 years. We were almost complete opposites, but we were just perfect for each other. Even at that moment, I was still waiting for her to come into the house and tell me that everything would be okay. But everything won't be fine. Everything collapsed. Things will never be good again. I thought about grabbing a beer and sitting on my porch, but I'm just not like that. I need movement to think. Bonnie believes that sitting back and relaxing is the best way to reflect. I could only remain still when she was next to me. I went upstairs to the bedroom we had shared until that moment. I grabbed a pair of running shorts and changed into them and a t-shirt. Another t-shirt, I threw the yellow one in the trash. I grabbed my iPod and went out for a run on the trails behind our house. My name is Bonnie Martin, and I feel empty. Me too, when I forced Grant to stay home from work so we could have sex. Even up until 9 months ago when I got pregnant, we had walking sex, as we called it, at least once a month. And this is in addition to our already vibrant sex life. The only problem was that I couldn't get pregnant. I wanted this in the worst sense of the word. It wasn't just about sex. I needed to feel the little creature growing inside of me that was a combination of our genes. When I gave birth to Marie, the whole pregnancy was terrible. First of all, I was such a disappointment to my parents. They never expected that I would be the one to get pregnant without being married. They let me live with them and helped me, but the shame on their faces never went away. Don't get me wrong, they love all my girls now, but the disappointment was in me. So now that I was married to Grant, I wanted us to go through the experience of having a baby together. We went to the doctors and learned the terrible news. We were both extremely healthy, but Grant had little active material. It wasn't impossible for me to get pregnant, but it would require a lot of luck. So we tried for another year or so and then adopted Tara. Tara was only 10 days old when she came to live with us. Grant and I shared all the joys and pains of raising another child, and he saw her from the very beginning. It was 8 years ago, and I remember it fondly. I love both my girls, and Grant is the air I breathe, and I can't live without him. As a gift to him and our family, I still wanted to relive the pregnancy experience. I think I wanted to see life the way pregnant women showed it on TV. When they're lying in bed and the man they love comes up to rub their belly and feel their baby growing inside. I wanted us to take childbirth classes and choose names together. I wanted to walk around the city with my belly sticking out so that everyone who looked at us would know that I was pregnant with his child. Maybe it was my memory of how bad and ashamed I felt when I was pregnant with Marie. Maybe it was the fact that Tara and I shared the experience the way I wanted, but only after she was born. For me, this was only half of what I wanted. Hell, I could have 100 kids with Grant if he wanted me to. I would be pregnant all the time. Maybe I was a little crazy. In retrospect, I now realize that I wasn't a little crazy, I was very selfish. I told my mom that I was tired and wanted to get some sleep. She started kicking people out of the room. After they left, I reached for the table next to the bed and felt such severe pain that I almost lost consciousness. Gasping in pain, my mother returned and hit me on the arm. "Bonnie, do you want to go home?" she barked at me. "If you tear your stitches, Brandy might go home before you. What are you reaching for?" "For my phone," I said. "I need to call Grant." She didn't say anything, just handed me the phone. I pressed the one button and my BlackBerry called Grant's iPhone. Our phones were set up to connect automatically. We each had a different ringtone on the other's phone, so we knew when the other was calling, so there was no need to look at the screen. Even if Grant screened out the calls, my ringtone let him know it was me. The phone rang, and on the second ring it went to voicemail. That told me exactly how upset Grant was. Under normal circumstances, Grant's phone would only go to voicemail after the fourth ring. This meant Grant manually sent my call to voicemail to reject me. He didn't want to talk to me. I pretended to talk to him to confuse my mother. I didn't want her to know we were having problems. She watched, smiling, and when I hung up, she kissed me on the forehead and told me to go to bed. When she turned and left the room, she looked at me. "Why didn't Grant come back here?" she asked. My mother was also in Grant's fan club. He wasn't feeling well," I said. And the nurse probably told him that since Brandy had some complications at birth, he didn't want to risk infecting her. "Well, that's stupid," my mother said. "Why?" I asked. "I think it's great that he already wants to be careful with his new daughter." "Well, remember, Brandy had to have surgery last night," my mom began. "Grant donated blood, and he told the doctor to make sure his blood only goes to his daughter. If being around him could make her sick, wouldn't it be the same if she got his blood?" I was shocked by my mother's words. I wasn't sure how true her words were. I didn't know if getting blood from someone with a cold could give you a cold or something like that. But at that moment, I realized that there was a chance that my entire house of cards could collapse. "Actually," my mother continued, "it was after Grant talked to the doctor again this morning that he rushed out of here. I had to get my mother to leave the room before I collapsed and started sobbing. "Mom, can you ask Brenda to come over when you leave?" I said. "I really need to talk to her about something." My mom looked puzzled. I'm sure she knew something was going on, but she just nodded her head and left the room. I had to be very careful while I was running. In the emotional and psychological state I was in, I really didn't pay much attention to where I was going or what surface I was running on. Trail running is different from track or road running. The surface changes and is different every time you run on it. You should worry about rain much more. It's not just a case of getting wet. Rain can easily destabilize your running surface. Anyway, I kept moving at a good pace, trying to forget about my problems with music and running. I always set my iPod to random. This way, I could just let iTunes fill it with a random selection of music, and it would play songs randomly. It's like having a different playlist every time I run. My music was as random as the ground I ran across. However, somehow, especially on that day, I realized that there are no coincidences. Perhaps everything we do is already planned. Maybe there was a divine consciousness or a higher being sitting there on a cloud and laughing at me. He or she probably decided that I had already been lucky enough in life, so it was time to shit on me. Somehow, in all this randomness, my iPod managed to play the most non-random song in the whole damn universe. I listened to Amy Lee, the earthly goth goddess of depression, sing about my special relationship. In fact, I was sure that Amy Lee had never heard of me, but it seemed that way. Almost all songs of ancient sad, but this one seems to fit my particular depression perfectly. "I wanted you to be with me for so long. I don't even know why now," Amy Lee sang over a cacophony of guitars and drums. The song, "Forever Go Forever You," hit the audience too painfully. From the very first second I met Bonnie, I loved her and wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. But at that moment, we were not only finished. It was difficult for me to understand why I loved her at all. She was the one who doubted us. Perhaps because she had already been burned once. She just didn't want to give me even a chance. It took me 2 weeks of constantly harassing her to get her to go out with me. 2 minutes into our first date, she tripped, I caught her, and we knew we would never be apart again. Of course, she claims she was just trying to succeed. I often told her that she almost didn't get caught. I was on the verge of giving up on her and dating someone else. As I mentioned earlier, we were complete opposites. I was very popular in high school and college. I played sports and hung out with a crowd that loved to party. I always had a choice of girls to date, but I made it a rule to never settle on just one girl. I just wanted to have fun. I wasn't ready or willing to be committed to a relationship with any one woman. There were simply too many things I would have to give up if I were tied down. There were a lot of girls who thought they were going to trap me. No one succeeded. They've tried it all. Cheerleaders, girls next door, artists, models, nerds, they all took their photos. And they all failed. I knew that someday, perhaps when I turned 50, I would settle down, but not much sooner. It was like that song from one of those damn Elvis movies my grandma used to make me watch with her. I need to live in order to do something. Bonnie, on the other hand, was even more mentally corrupted than I was. I was afraid or just didn't want to agree to anything, and she didn't even go to college. Immediately after finishing school, she entered a monastery to become a nun. She trained and served until she was 23 or 24 years old. Before taking her final vows, she decided to take another look at the world outside the monastery. She took 3 months off and rented a small apartment. She met some smooth guy. She immediately went crazy with sex. Her words are not mine. After she got tired of the first guy, or he got tired of her, there was another, then another, and one day she woke up and found out she was pregnant. It was a sobering experience for her. She looked at her life and just cried. Her life was far from what she wanted. That's when she returned to her parents. After Marie was born, she took a job as a waitress to support herself and Marie, and then gave up men for the rest of her life. That's why I had such a hard time getting her to go on a date with me. At that point in her life, Bonnie was dedicated to giving Marie the best life she could. There was no place for love, romance, and especially men in her life. Our first date wasn't some magical, expensive escapade that cost thousands of dollars. I took her to an early movie, and then we went for ice cream. I think the deal was sealed for me when she accidentally slipped and I caught her. Because of this, our faces were in close proximity and our eyes met. It was magical for me. I saw my future with her, and then I realized that she was the woman to whom I could devote myself. She often said things like this to me. The one I love the most sounds very corny, but she said she saw her children in my eyes. Yes, children are plural, and at the time I didn't have any, but she only had one. The first meeting with Marie was frightening. I knew that any future I had with Bonnie depended on Marie. We were supposed to go to the park on our first date, which we took Marie on, but Bonnie still wanted to knock my socks off. Perhaps this is also a good time to have some fun. Bonnie is not some waif, skinny supermodel with 5-foot legs. Bonnie is very beautiful, but she is a little overweight. She's not fat or huge. She's just not skinny. She has big legs, a big butt, and huge breasts. I wouldn't trade her for all the money in the world. I love snuggling against her big soft thighs when we sleep. Anyway, back to the date. I was more nervous about meeting Marie than I was about meeting Bonnie's parents. After Bonnie introduced us, I smiled and the little girl came up to me and looked at me. She broke into a smile and began to speak quickly. "Hi, my name is Marie. I'm 3 years old," she said. All this merged into one stream of words. She stopped and held up 4 fingers, showing me that she was 3 years old. "Do you know how to play any games? What about jacks?" "I love playing jacks, but I'm not very good at it," she said. I got some of this. I remembered that girls in my area played jacks, but I never tried it. I shrugged, and she jumped up again. "Okay, don't worry about it. I'll teach you, okay?" She quickly ran out of the room. Bonnie must have heard her footsteps and ran into the living room, half-dressed. Her blouse was still open, and I saw her bra-covered tits for the first time. I froze in place. What pissed me off was the look of anger on her face. "What did you do with her?" She snapped. "Maybe you should just leave. This won't work." I was so confused that I didn't know what to do. On the one hand, I did nothing to the little girl. I'm not much of a kid person, but I thought this one was adorable. I really wanted to be close to her. On the other hand, Bonnie's anger was making it harder for her to breathe, and her heaving chest was taking its toll on me. I opened the door and got ready to leave. "I'm really sorry you feel that way," I said. "I thought we had something special." "Me too," she said. Suddenly, Marie reappeared with a small suitcase. She looked at me, then back at her mother. "Where are you going?" she asked me. "I thought we were going to play jacks. I have to teach you how to do this." I should have gone and taken the jacks. You can't play without jacks. She grabbed my hand and pulled me back through the door, then looked at her mother. Mom, did you make him go home? No, honey, I want him to stay too, Bonnie said. Then she noticed that her shirt was unbuttoned and began to button it. From then on, the three of us were inseparable. We got married and a few years later adopted another girl. Every day I loved Bonnie more, and I loved my girls too. I didn't think my life could get better until about 9 months ago when Bonnie told me she was pregnant. The astronauts on the International Space Station probably heard our screams that day. It's not that we loved our girls any less, but we both really wanted it and thought we'd have to do without it. I already knew that Bonnie had strong feelings about how she wanted the pregnancy to proceed. I was worried whether I could live up to her expectations. Many women's romantic fantasies revolve around poetry, a trip to Paris, or an elegant romantic event. For my Bonnie, the most romantic, erotic, and sensual thing two people can do is have a child together. You often hear the saying that when two people are in love, their souls merge when they make love. For Bonnie, the ultimate expression of love is having a child with the man you love. She had chafing all over her belly, running out in the middle of the night for pickles and going for ice cream. Every day she became bigger and happier. She also became even more horny, if that was even possible. I also had to reassure her that the few pounds she had gained only made her more attractive to me. I had to develop a kind of radar to determine exactly what she needed to hear and when she needed to hear it. Like I said, yesterday had to be the happiest moment of my life, other than the day Bonnie first told me she loved me and the day she agreed to marry me. But all the happiness that came from wearing stupid t-shirts and handing out bubblegum cigars to everyone I met yesterday paled in comparison to the despair I felt when an overworked doctor said those three terrible words. As mentioned, I made it to the hospital very early, waking up from 2 hours of sleep, then taking a quick shower, putting on jeans and my ridiculous t-shirt. When I arrived at the hospital, I asked the doctor if I needed to give more blood, and he told me that they were fine, but if they needed blood, it would be better if it came from her mother or her biological father. Her biological father, I thought. Who the hell was I? Seeing my reaction, the doctor realized that he had screwed up. He apologized several times and realized he may have exposed himself to a lawsuit. Suddenly, the room became much smaller, and I found it difficult to breathe. I had all these mixed thoughts running through my head. Why wasn't I the child's biological father? Wait, was I supposed to be him? I was not Marie's biological father. I was not Tara's biological father. So was I supposed to be Brandy's father? Marie is not mine. Tara is not mine. Now it turns out that Brandy is not mine either. And obviously, when it came down to Bonnie herself, she wasn't mine either. She was definitely sleeping with someone else, and she knew it. After 11 years of marriage, she knew how I felt about her, so I'm sure she knew what it would do to me. She probably also knew that Brandy was not mine, so in addition to cheating, she was also deliberately misleading me. None of them were mine. Do I have something of my own? I needed to get out and get some fresh air. I quickly pushed past a bunch of our friends who wanted to wish me luck. Although it wasn't their fault, I just couldn't handle them at that moment. I just needed to get out of this room before the walls that were closing in around me crushed me. The nurse told me that my wife had just woken up and was asking about me. At the same time, several of our friends and Bonnie's sister, Brenda, saw the stupid t-shirt and started calling me daddy. It was like I was locked in a room full of people ironically calling me dad and laughing at me. I wasn't really anyone's dad. I was just a joke. Everywhere I looked, there was another smiling face calling me daddy. It was like an episode of The Twilight Zone. Then the nurse came up and said in a very insistent voice, "Dad, your wife wants to see you now, very much. She said that she needs a kiss." "Hey, you better not go," someone said. "That's what started all this bullshit in the first place, Dad." I must have been temporarily knocked out because everything they said seemed to come to me in slow motion. Their voices sounded distorted and unnaturally deep, and everything they said, despite their innocence, was dripping with sarcasm. Dad, Dad, your wife wants to see you, Dad. More kisses for you, Dad. These were my family and friends, but suddenly I hated every single one of them. If I could press a button and detonate a bomb at that moment, the hospital would be a smoking crater in the middle of the city right now. Go to hell, I screamed with all my might. Everyone in the room stopped and stared at me. Apart from the beeping machines and computers, there was dead silence. The next thing I remember was starting the car in the parking lot and hearing the sound of tires shredding as I pulled out of there. Lost in thought, back on the trail, I ran faster and faster over the uneven ground, with only Amy Lee's sad cry as my companion. Brenda Franklin entered the room and stood next to her sister's bed. At first glance, the two sisters couldn't be more different. In fact, the differences were even greater. Raised with similar values, one would expect the sisters to share similar personalities and values, but this is not the case. When Bonnie entered a convent at age 20, Brenda became a model. Bonnie was either voluptuous or stocky, depending on how generous you were. Brenda was very slim, as her career required. Bonnie could go shopping and most people wouldn't even remember seeing her. The men's heads almost fell off their necks trying to catch a glimpse of Brenda. Bonnie went crazy with sex after leaving the convent. Brenda experimented during college and looked at sex as just another function of the human body. She did not escape this and did not go after him. Although she had no qualms about trying to get a more lucrative assignment from time to time, the occasions when she did so were few and far between. Bonnie loved children and wanted as many as possible. Brenda had her tubes tied when she was 22. She didn't want to risk her career or livelihood because of an unwanted pregnancy. Her sister's misfortune was extremely significant for her. Bonnie loved her husband more than she could express in words. Brenda had never felt anything like what Bonnie said. Bonnie was sure that Brenda just needed to meet the right man under the right circumstances. Sometimes she tried her best to fix her sister. Brenda very gently rebuffed her sister's attempts at marriage. She knew that when she was ready, the right man would be nearby. Brenda looked at her sister lying in the hospital bed. She shook her head. All this nonsense about young mothers looking radiant was pure nonsense. Bonnie looked terrible. Her hair was everywhere. She had no makeup on and looked like she was about to cry. There were several pipes in it, pumping God knows what combination of chemicals in her veins. There was no way Brenda was going through all this just to give the world another mouth to feed. And yet, her sister, even after the birth of the child, should have gained 20 pounds. She was very lucky that Grant loved her because it took months to lose the weight. "Hey, sis, did you want to see me?" she said. "I need a really big favor," Bonnie said. "Okay," Brenda said. "I need you to go to the house and talk to Grant," Bonnie began. "But won't he come here anyway?" Brenda asked. "Bren, I did something very stupid and very bad. I did it for the best reason. I did it for Grant, but I don't think he'll take it that way," Bonnie said. Her eyes filled with tears and she began to cry. She said this, confident that only her sister would know about it. "Okay, turn off the water supply." "I'll go," Brenda said. Seeing her sister cry made her feel awkward. Brenda was not a very emotional woman. "What do you want me to tell him?" "Just ask him to call me or come see me," Bonnie begged. "Tell him I love him and we can get over this. I made a mistake." Brenda shook her head and left the room. This was one of the reasons why she never tried to pursue any kind of relationship. It was just too much work. There were weeks and months of suffering to compensate for a few days or minutes of happiness. It was a good run. My girls would be thrilled to know that I saw a deer. I also saw lots of squirrels of different colors, a few chipmunks, a raccoon, and a skunk, which I stayed away from. As I dragged my body back home, which surprisingly no longer felt like home to me, I was tired, but it was a pleasant tiredness. I realized that I had been unconsciously trying to exhaust myself to the point where I was too tired to sit down and think about what Bonnie had done to us. Not just with me. Her actions changed our entire family. I thought about how, while in the hospital, I even thought that Marie was not my daughter. That was the most insidious thing about it all. Most of us these days are enlightened enough to deceive ourselves with thoughts. We all believe that we do not judge our friends or anyone else based on their skin color, nationality, or age. We consider ourselves above all this. We believe that these are all in the past and are simply remnants of a less enlightened era. Then, in a fit of anger, we shout the N-word or call someone another ethnic slur, and we are forced to take an even more serious view of ourselves. At the same time, all our friends are using our outbursts to label us and at the same time elevate themselves in their own eyes because they are now morally superior to us, until that happens to them. For the past 11 years, Marie has been my daughter. She bears my last name. But in a fit of anger, at least in my thoughts, I decided or realized that she was not mine. If she is not mine, then whose daughter is she? If you count the hours, there is no person on the planet, including Bonnie, who has spent more time with Marie than I have. I would gladly die for her. Does it matter that her father has never met her and probably couldn't pick her out of a group of girls her age if his life depended on it? What about Tara? Is she more mine than Maria because Bonnie and I adopted her together? And a new baby, Brandy. If none of the others are my biological child, why do I already hate her so much when just 24 hours ago I was so ready to love her? In fact, I loved her in the first hours of her life, until I learned that she and I were both victims of her mother's betrayal. What about Bonnie? She told me about her wild days. Obviously, what we had meant nothing to her. She was probably just bored and needed more entertainment. She decided she could just do it on the side while I worked as hard as I could to support her. She screwed up and got pregnant again. No problem. This time she already had a jerk to take care of her. All this nonsense about how we finally got lucky and how wonderful and beautiful it was. Just so she can force me to raise someone else's child. Every day when I hauled my ass to work, they were probably lying in my bed laughing at me. The biggest question was, what was I going to do about it? I couldn't stay married to Bonnie. Even though I loved her with all my heart, it was impossible to fix it. The worst part was what it would do to my girls. At best, it would destroy the family. I ran through all the different scenarios in my head as I cracked Dos Equis and sat down on my deck. Most of all, I wanted to divorce this cheater and somehow get custody of my girls. I'll suffer for a while, but eventually I'll be able to forget Bonnie. I wasn't sure the girls would do it. The time will come when they will need a female influence in their lives. Even if I married again, the person I married would be very offended for daring to try to replace his mother. The second possibility was even worse for me and exactly the same for the girls. If I divorced Bonnie and she got custody, I will only be able to see my girls on weekends and holidays. Maybe I'll see them at some school event or birthday party. It would be hell. It simply wouldn't be enough. This path will also bring complications. They will live with Bonnie's new monster. They will also be her sisters. So after a while, when I would go pick them up or bring them gifts, things would get awkward. It would be difficult for them to understand my statements that she had her own father. I hated this version. Finally, the best short-term solution for my girls would be if I could just live with it. I simply did not have the ability to accept or love this child. I could sit down with Bonnie and explain to her that I don't want anything to do with her or her child, but that we can stay together and pretend to be a family for the benefit of my daughters. When they are all older and can understand what is happening, we will reconsider the situation. This would mean daily contact with Bonnie and her baby. This child, through no fault of his own, will be a constant reminder that Bonnie destroyed our family. So this decision would be the worst for me. But it would also be the greatest reward because I could see my girls every day, watch them grow. and be there to help guide them through life so they don't grow up with only a cheater as a role model. Of course, changes must be made. We could sell girls on the fact that having a baby and having a baby caused some of this. Dad sleeps in the guest room or basement because mom needs to be close to the baby. It would have worked, but there was no way I was giving up my bedroom. Bonnie could sleep in the basement. I would help her move some furniture there, but that would be the end of my involvement. She will also continue to keep the house clean and prepare meals. I would continue to support us. I would open a savings account for her so that when this is all over, she will have some money to start a new life. I will have to continue this farce for 10 years. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that long. Only 120 months or 520 weeks have passed. It might have been easier to think of it as 650 days. But if they spent their days with my girls, I could do this for them. Of course, there wouldn't be any relationship other than being Bonnie's co-parents. No sex, no hugs, no gifts. I didn't want to communicate with her. Knock, knock, knock. Damn it. Who the hell was knocking on my damn fence? I crossed the yard and opened the gate. Bonnie's sister, Brenda, stood there. "Hi, Grant," she smiled. I want to say that she smiled warmly, but, well, maybe if you lived above the Arctic Circle, you could call this place warm. Anywhere else her smile would have been considered icy as hell. I knew she didn't mean anything by it. She was just Brenda. I grabbed her and hugged her. As usual, she just stood there and let me. She didn't return the hug. It was like hugging one of those stuffed mannequins or an inflatable doll. "Bonnie wants you to call her," she said. "She asked me to tell you that she loves you, and she made a mistake. She says you guys can get through this." Then she stood there like I was supposed to send a message or something. It was fucking awkward. The two of us just stood there and didn't say anything. Finally, she broke the silence. She probably spoke because she was bored and wanted to do something else. "Don't you want to give me something to say to her?" she asked. "Or are you not going to call her?" "No," I said. "No, this is the answer to what?" she asked. "Both," I said. "I have nothing to say to her, period." This led to another awkward period where she stood there and said nothing. I wanted to say something stupid, like, "The weather is nice," but I didn't. So she had to talk again. "Look, Grant, don't you need to talk or anything?" she asked. I could tell from the look on her face that she was just asking to be polite, but she didn't really want to be there or be a part of it. "No, no talking," I said. "Well," Brenda said, "anyway, the doctor is going to let her go home tomorrow. Then you can talk to her, right?" "Okay, now we can talk," I snapped. "Tell her not to try to come back to my damn house. I don't want her or her baby here. She can move in with your parents." Brenda jumped back. I think she was shocked by my tone and the heat in my voice. Grant, what's going on? You and my sister are in love and everything. Why can't she come home?" "Ask her to explain it to you," I snapped. "But Grant, she can't stay with her parents. Mom and Dad are now with Marie and Tara. There isn't enough room for them, the newborn and Bonnie." "You guys will figure it out," I said. "My girls can always go home or stay with your parents. Bonnie might move in with you, or she can move in with your parents if the girls come home." "I'll try to tell her that," Brenda said. She turned and walked back to her car. At the last second before I closed the gate, she looked at me and said, "I don't know what my sister did, but I know that she loves you very much." I closed and locked the gate and went back to drinking. About half an hour later, my iPhone rang. I had about 3 beers inside me, so while I wasn't drunk, I wasn't in the best of shape either. I answered. "Grant, why can't I go home?" asked a tearful Bonnie. "We need to work this out. I can't be happy without you. I know you don't understand and you feel very hurt and angry, but "But what are you doing?" I shouted into the phone. "You got bored, so you went and had sex with some guy for fun?" "No," she said. "I did it for us." I was amazed. She's clearly gone crazy. I had no words. I couldn't find a single word to make it all make sense. This was our dream, she said, and it was wonderful. Bonnie started crying and sobbing into the phone. I just hung up. After a while, she called again. This time my brain was working, so I didn't answer. A couple of hours later, the phone rang again. I looked at my caller ID and saw that it was not Bonnie's number. It was her parents' home phone number. I answered because I didn't want to be rude to her parents. They never treated me badly, so there was no need for them to do it. "Dad, I have a question for you," Marie said. "Hello, little angel," I said. Despite my need to be depressed and angry, I could never take it out on her. That evil voice in the back of my mind finished the sentence for me, even if she's not mine. "If you're home, why am I stuck here with my grandparents?" she asked. "It didn't bother me to be here while you were in the hospital with your mom, but I need to be with you. Come and get me." "Angel, I would love to," I said, and I didn't lie. But I've had a couple of beers, so I really shouldn't be driving, especially with my baby in the car. "Oh, Dad," she laughed. "I'm no longer your baby. I'm your teenager now. I'm 14. "Marie, you will always be my baby," I said. "It doesn't matter what happens or what anyone says." Before she could respond, I heard another voice in the background. "Daddy, I'm your baby," Tara said. "Brandy can be Mommy's baby, and I can be yours since Marie is so grown up now." I couldn't stop laughing. Bonnie's father then came on the line. "Grant, what's going on? Bonnie has been crying all day, and I know that's why you didn't show up at the hospital. She doesn't want to tell me what it is, but whatever it is, you two need to talk. Nothing happens without talking. Decide." "You're absolutely right, sir," I said. "I'll stop by the hospital tomorrow and talk to her." "Aren't you going to bring her home?" he asked. "It's possible, but unlikely," I said. The next morning, early in the morning, I went to the hospital. I was greeted with applause. Several people told me they were sure I would return. I ignored them all. Several nurses have told me that they have seen many cases of daddy anxiety. I walked into Bonnie's room and stood at the door for a few seconds before she noticed me. The nurse disconnected the tubes and electrodes that connected her to the monitoring machines and gave her medications and painkillers. When she saw me, her face lit up, and she extended her hands to me. Everything in me wanted to go to her and hug her, but I didn't. The nurse warned her because she almost ripped out one of the needles in her arm. I waited a few moments, and the nurse left the room. "You can come and sit next to me," Bonnie said sadly. "Maybe you should lock the door." Her voice became harsher. "Before we start this, I need to ask you something. Why did you lie to your daughter last night?" she said. "I didn't think I should bring her home without your consent," I said. "Grant, when I didn't want her to play volleyball, you signed her up anyway. You didn't ask me anything. When I asked you about it, do you remember what you said?" I shook my head, although I remembered. "You told me she really wanted to play, and you didn't have to ask my permission to sign your own daughter up for something," she said sharply. "But now, because I made a really stupid mistake that isn't as bad as you think, suddenly you have to ask my permission just to let her come home and be with the father she loves and misses." "I'm not her father, I'm her dad," I said. "God, I'm so lucky I can't get up right now," she said. "I swear, as much as I want you to hug me, I would have slapped you first. You're her daddy and her father and her daddy and all these other stupid names for the man who raised her and loves her. Don't let your stupid ego hurt our daughter, Grant. I'm the one who screwed up, not her," she said. "So can I take her and Tara home?" I asked. "Of course you can, fool. We never intended to do otherwise," she said. "They belong to you." "Well, that should make things easier for your parents," I said. "Of course it is," she smiled. "Your girls were probably driving them crazy. Now they'll have some peace and privacy. You know they're still doing it, right? We'll be too." How are they going to have any privacy or quiet with a child who is screaming and crying? I asked. Do you remember that kids do this a lot? Grant, what are you talking about? She asked. Well, Brenda told me that your parents don't have enough room in the house for you, your baby, and the girls. So if I take the girls with me until we figure out what we're going to do, it shouldn't be a problem, right? She looked like she was a balloon that had just lost all the air. What do you mean until we figure this out? She asked. You're making it seem like there's a chance we won't do it. And what the hell do you mean, my child? Grant, please don't take this out on an innocent child. She is our child. From the first second when I was pregnant, you were there, both for me and for her. You spoke to her every day while she was in my womb, and now you want to leave her. You rubbed my tummy. You felt her push. You told her everything about us, our family, and everything we were going to do. And now suddenly you're not her father? This is nonsense, Grant. Bonnie tried to get up in bed. It hurt her, but I remained unmoved. Don't you understand, dear? It was the best pregnancy ever. It was so romantic. This brought us even closer. And you will be the perfect father. This is why everything started from the very beginning. It was everything I wanted for us. It was everything I dreamed of. Suddenly, everything became clear. I was convinced that Bonnie was back to her old wild behavior. I thought this was all some terrible mistake. My theory was that she went out looking for sex because I wasn't enough for her and got pregnant. But in fact, it was even worse. In my mind, I hated her and her child because they both reminded me of my inferiority. What I could give her was clearly not enough. This was much worse. The woman I loved gave herself for the sole purpose of getting pregnant, having a child with another man, and convincing me that the child was mine. Her child was not an accident caused by negligence or bad luck. This was a planned betrayal. My heart hurt even more, although I didn't think it was possible. My eyes filled with tears, and I had to turn away from her. You understand, don't you? She asked. You see now, don't you? I wanted. No, I needed us to have a child together, Grant. I love you so much that I just had to share this with you. And as much as I wanted it to be our child, it just didn't happen. I dreamed about us making love and getting pregnant with you. I prayed about it. I craved it. I wanted us to do everything we did while I was pregnant. It was wonderful, so wonderful. I swear she will be all yours, just like the others. Nobody will ever know. Yes, I said slowly. I tried to control the anger in my voice and speak more quietly. No one will ever know that the woman I foolishly thought loved me as much as I loved her gave herself up to a selfish fantasy. No one will ever know that our girls and our life together were not good enough for you. They won't know that I wasn't enough for you. They probably won't know that you broke my heart. But damn it, they'll know this farce is over. They will know that I had at least some pride. They'll know about it because we're breaking up. No, we won't part, she shouted. I noticed faces in the window on the door. We will never part. I love you, Grant. It was only sex, and it only happened twice. I hate this guy. I didn't like it, but it was necessary. I did this for us and our child. It's over now. We'll be fine. No, Bonnie, we were already doing well. We had a wonderful life. You, me, and our girls. I loved you all more than I could express in words. But you ruined everything, I said. When I first came here, I had 3 plans. I had 3 ways to get us out of this shit you got us into. I didn't know which one to choose, so I wanted to discuss them with you, and together we would decide which one to choose. But now I'm back at square one. There's something wrong with you. I can't make any decisions with you. I can never trust you again. What were your plans? She asked quietly. We're getting a divorce and I get custody, I said. Are you crazy? She asked. No. I didn't want custody of your child, I said. I only wanted the other 2. What about me? She asked. Who will get custody of me? I didn't even think about that, I said. I don't care. I assumed you would end up with your huge, powerful lover. I don't want to be with him. I do not like him. He doesn't love me, and he's already married. He's one of those guys who just uses women, but this time I used him." Bonnie looked at me with pleading in her eyes. We heard the key being turned in the lock, but the door did not open. "Are other plans better? I don't really like this one," she asked. "I don't like anything where we're not together." "We're getting a divorce and you get custody," I said. "I pay alimony for two people I considered my own. But without alimony to support you, your lover can support you. I will receive the maximum possible rights to see my children." "This is even worse," she said. "Yes, I would spend more time with the girls, but I won't be happy without you, and Marie would have hated me forever for taking you away from her. Everything would seem like it was my fault. Tara would hate me too, and Brandy would be confused." Her look told me that she wanted to hear the last plan. "The last plan was to pretend we were still married for the sake of the girls," I said. She perked up and even smiled a little. "I could live with this for a while," she said. "Could you live with this for 10 years?" I asked. "Hell yes," she said. "This plan gives me the best chance to save my family. And I know you, Grant. You will forgive me sooner or later. And you will love Brandy the same way you love others." "I know what you're thinking, Bonnie," I replied sharply. "And this will not happen. First of all, I told you that this would be a fake marriage, and he will only do it for the girls. We won't sleep together or have sex. I was going to build a room in the basement for you and your baby. We would just pretend to have a normal life so the kids could have a good life. But there will be no relationship between us." She was stunned at that moment. "I chose 10 years not because I wanted to give you time to mend between us. We don't exist. I chose 10 years because Tara would be leaving for college and we might go our separate ways. This is not about us. This is about my girls. Well, about those whom I considered mine. One more thing. The house will be closed to you. You can't bring your lovers there. And when I'm ready to start dating, I won't bring anyone there either," I said. "You got it all wrong, Grant," she sobbed. "Everything you said is simply wrong. I love you so much that the thought of not being able to touch or kiss you hurts me. And although you don't know it, you love me too. I could have you back in my bed in less than a week. And I'm not a slut. I need, and I don't want to have any lovers other than you. In 10 years, I have never slept with anyone other than you. I didn't want to. I just wanted us to share something, and I got the wrong way. We're married, Grant. We will always be together. I don't want to have sex with anyone but you. And your great 10-year plan seems to overlook the fact that Brandy will only be 10 years old when you leave us. She will be too young to understand why she lost you. She's your daughter, Grant. She was conceived with you in her thoughts, and you will love her as much as you love the other two." "No," I said. "No, what?" she asked. "No to all this nonsense," I answered sharply. My voice grew louder, and a couple of heads poked their heads through the unlocked door. At this moment, I didn't care anymore. "I'm not going to communicate with your daughter. She reminds me too much of what I had and what I lost. I don't care if she doesn't realize that she lost me after 10 years or 10 centuries, because I'm not her father. I don't love you anymore, Bonnie." She looked like I had hit her and started sobbing. "You did this to us with all your games. You burned away all the love I had for you. I don't think you ever really loved me. If you loved me, you would try to see all this from my side. You wouldn't do this at all if you loved it. Even if we decide to try this pretend nonsense, I'm not sure how long I can be around you. And I'm not as easily tempted as you think. It used to be easy for you because I loved you. I liked being with you. This is no longer the case. Forget all this fake marriage. I'm filing for divorce on Monday morning." I left the room and walked past several shocked faces. Bonnie's father followed me. "Grant, stop," he called. I didn't stop, but I slowed down so he could catch up with me. Again, it's respect. "What the hell is going on?" he asked. By then, we were outside the hospital, and he sat down with me on a bench in the parking lot. He handed me a handkerchief and turned away while I wiped away my tears. "Grant, you need to let us help you and Bonnie fix this," he said. "Something has been wrong between you and Bonnie the last couple of days. I'm sure it has something to do with the new baby, right?" I nodded. "I heard some," he said. "You are the most accepting person I have ever known. Both my granddaughters love you, and you love them. Your relationship with Marie is scary. If it were possible to mentally rewrite a person's genetic code, hers would match yours. Grant, she loves you so much. Why were you screaming about Bonnie's daughter?" "Bonnie's maternal instincts seem to be malfunctioning," I began. "As you said, I love Marie like my own daughter. Most of the time I forget that she is not mine. I think she forgets sometimes too. It doesn't matter. I love her and Tara as if they were mine. I entered this relationship with my eyes open. I consciously choose to love them both." But that wasn't enough for Bonnie. She wanted another baby so badly that she went out and had sex with some guy just to get pregnant. It appears this was not a one-time occurrence. I'm not sure I believe her that it only happened a few times. I don't know if I can trust her at all. She planned it all. Go out, have unprotected sex with a guy or guys she probably didn't even know. Who knows what diseases she might have brought home, and continue to do this until she gets pregnant. Then pretend that, lo and behold, we're going to have a baby together. She made me experience all the things she always wanted, all the things she missed when she was pregnant with Marie, and I got caught. If it weren't for the overworked doctor, I would never have known. She would let me live the rest of my life, not knowing, while she and her lover laughed at me. His face took on a shocked look. He couldn't believe his daughter was capable of this. "I'm not going to go along with her plan," I said. "It's one thing to play along without knowing. But now that I know, I feel like George Jetson, and I just want to get away from this crazy cycle." "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I will seek a divorce," I told him. His face became even more gloomy. He was not young, and too many such shocks might not have been good for him. "Bonnie told me I could take the girls home," I said. "If you want to confirm this with her, that's fine with me." "No, son," he said. "If you're going to break up, I'm sure both of you will want to spend as much time as possible with them. This will also make things easier for you," I told him. "You don't have enough room in your house for my girls and Bonnie and her baby." He just nodded. "But there's more space in your house," he said. "You could all fit comfortably there. That's why you stayed in that big old house your parents left you after you married Bonnie. You always knew that you and Bonnie wanted a house full of children." "It's true, sir," I said. "But I don't think I'd be comfortable living under the same roof as Bonnie and her baby. You and Mary are always welcome to come and visit. You don't have to call ahead or anything like that. You can come and pick up the girls and take them to their mother and their half-sister. I hope we can all remain friends. I'm glad you'll take care of Bonnie. I don't want anything bad to happen to her. She just hurt me too much, and I can't be with her anymore." "You don't think this is temporary, do you?" he asked. "No, sir," I said. "And when you talk to her, please remind her that agreeing to the divorce is in her best interest. I'm looking for a quick and easy divorce. I will register irreconcilable differences to avoid embarrassment on both sides. I will pay as much child support as necessary for my girls, as well as provide everything else they need. However, I will not pay Bonnie's child support or any child support for herself. I refuse to pay her for breaking my heart and destroying our family. Let her lover take care of her. You can also remind her that no matter how angry I am, for that matter, she has already admitted that she went somewhere and intentionally got pregnant and tried to hook me up with another man's child. This is a fraud. She could be prosecuted for this. It might even be enough to give me custody of my girls and earn her a break from jail. I will still get a divorce, but I will get much better terms. I try to be polite about it for the sake of my girls. It's all about Marie and Tara," I said. "I want them to have a better life. If we have to get a divorce, I want it to affect them as little as possible. They have several friends whose parents are not together, so they will adjust. I just don't want it to be hard for them. The next few days were difficult for everyone. Things were a whirlwind of activity. The next day, Bonnie went home to her parents' house. I took the girls to see her, but didn't go in. They couldn't stay long because Bonnie had to go to the hospital to be with Brandy. The doctors didn't let Brandy go home for another couple of days. Bonnie kept calling me and begging me to talk to her. She sent her parents, individually or together, to talk to me. Oddly enough, it was the impassive Brenda who came closest to understanding. One night, when the girls were asleep and Bonnie said she couldn't bear to be away from me any longer, she persuaded Brenda to take her to the house. She knocked loudly on the door and tried to get me to let her in. I called her on her mobile and told her that the girls were sleeping and she would wake them up by playing dumb. This will not improve her chances of getting custody. She told me that if I came out and talked to her for 2 minutes, she would leave. She just needed to hear the sound of my voice. I agreed. I walked out onto the porch and saw Bonnie and her sister Brenda sitting in lawn chairs on our porch. There were 4 chairs where we sometimes sat with the children. I think she expected me to sit on one of the chairs. She probably expected me to sit next to her. I sat down on the porch railing opposite the chairs. "Hi, Brenda," I said, smiling. Then I turned to my wife. I very slowly allowed my smile to fade and my face to change until it showed the anger and disgust I felt towards her. I wanted her to see all the changes in my facial expression. Then he spoke in the coldest voice he could. "You have 2 minutes," I told her. "How are the girls?" she asked. "They're fine," I said. I told her what we did that day, and she smiled. "I always knew you would be a great father," she said. "I think that's why I find it so hard to believe that you weren't in the hospital to visit your other daughter, who isn't doing so well. She needs you too, and her mother needs you more than ever." "Damn it," I said. "Time flies when you listen to nonsense. Your time is up. If you start knocking on my door again, I'll call the police." She reached out to grab me. "Understand that I love you. I beg you to forgive me and give me another chance. Give Brandy a chance." As I started to close the door, I heard Brenda tell her, "Leave him alone, Bonnie. Haven't you done enough for him already? He is suffering too, and none of this was his fault. You did it all." Bonnie snapped back at her sister. "Shut up, Brenda. He is mine and will always be mine. You should be on my side. I already know I messed up. Now I need to fix this, and I try. Maybe you don't understand this because you've never loved anyone, but I won't let him divorce me. It will not happen." I could hear the desperation in her voice. I wish I had paid more attention to this. Perhaps things could have turned out differently. The next morning I woke up and made breakfast for my daughters before taking them to school. It was a common thing. I still did it every day. Cooking breakfast was unusual, but driving them to school was not. They were very excited. "Brandy is coming home today, Dad," Marie said. "Great, Angel," I said quietly. I tried to keep the anger out of my voice so my daughter wouldn't think it was directed at her. "Remember the rules, Dad," Tara said as we approached their school. "What are the rules, baby?" I asked. "Marie is too old to be your baby. Now she's just a girl. I'm your baby, and Brandy is Mama's baby," Tara said. "Okay, it's established," I laughed, releasing them. I watched them enter the school and left for work, thinking everything was fine. I sat down at my desk and started trying to focus on the assignments that were due that day. I had been working and doing absolutely nothing for about 3 hours when my secretary, Joan, came in and told me I had 2 urgent calls. One call was from the police and the other was from the hospital. I took a call from the police. My house was robbed. I quickly ran outside, jumped into my Mustang, and drove home. The alarm was not set, which was strange because I was sure I had set it off in the morning. There were 2 police officers on the scene. They showed me where the window on the side of the house was broken. "So they came in," said one of the officers. I opened the front door and looked around the house. It was not looted. In fact, nothing was missing or damaged. I tried to look at the situation more critically. Then I noticed it. The girls' breakfast dishes were missing, and the dishwasher was running. The dirty laundry basket was empty, and there was a load of laundry in the washer and another load in the dryer. When I told the officers about this, they laughed. "Someone broke into your house to clean out your place," they laughed. As we continued to tour the house, I noticed little things. Several things are missing. For example, a framed photograph of Bonnie and I at our wedding disappeared. This was a special photo because of all the photos taken at our wedding. It was the only one that didn't include Marie. Our entire wedding album was in place. In fact, they put him on my bed. There was a piece of paper on it. Several family photographs, as well as photographs of the girls, were missing, and several of Bonnie's personal belongings were missing. It was quite clear what had happened. I changed the locks on the doors so Bonnie couldn't get in. She broke the window and turned off the alarm. I explained this to the officers, and they left after finding out that I did not want to apply. I didn't blame them. I was sure there were donuts somewhere that needed them. I still wondered why Bonnie didn't take the wedding album. It was one of her favorite things. She leafed through it often, looking at every photo, every perfect moment in time, captured and kept there unchanged as we lived our lives. She must have memorized all these photographs, but she still loved looking at this book. I took her note. "Dear Grant, I'm sorry that I didn't love you at first sight the way you always claimed to love me. However, you have always been much more important to me than I could be to you. You were free when we met to go out and find whoever you wanted. This was one of the ways I knew that you really loved me. Realistically speaking, who goes out and falls in love with a chubby girl with a baby when there are tons of slim, attractive girls with no strings attached? It had to be love. But I wasn't free to just find someone I loved. After our first date, I was sure that I loved you too, but I couldn't give my heart to someone just because I loved him. I had to think about my daughter. It had to suit us all, and that was it. After that, my love for you blossomed and continued to grow until it reached the point of obsession. She still is. I would do anything to keep you in my life. I don't have to worry about my heart because you will always be there. No one can take your place, ever. No one can compare to you in my bed either, and believe me, I would have known. I've had my time being a wild girl, you know it, and no one has ever made me feel the way you do. When you talked about me and my lover laughing at you, you were partly right. He didn't laugh at you because he didn't know anything about you. I didn't want to desecrate my love for you by even mentioning to him that I was married. I let him think I was just some horny fatty who needed sex. The one who laughed at you was me, Grant. I laughed that you could even think that anyone could ever replace you. It's still funny. There will never be another man for me." Surprisingly, he didn't even remember me before. I knew that he could get me pregnant quickly. I also knew that he had no soul and would never think about his child. He ended up leaving after I got pregnant the first time and never tried to contact me about Marie. She was never his daughter. She was always yours. I love you, Grant. I really thought it would be good. I didn't enjoy sex. I didn't kiss him. Both times I came home and showered at least 5 times. I just couldn't cleanse myself enough. I also felt very bad after both times. The only thing that cheered me up after both was making love to you and blocking painful memories, but not feeling guilty. I was very happy when I found out I was pregnant because it meant I wouldn't have to see him anymore. I did it not because I liked it, but because I wanted to share something wonderful with the only man I had ever loved, and with whom we seemed unable to get along without help. If I had known that this would endanger our family, I would never have done this. I did this for the sake of our family, not to destroy it. It felt like giving up something so wonderful for something so insignificant. I had to go through a little trouble that you should never have known about. My body and all of me belonged only to you, Grant. From the moment we met, I didn't think that letting someone borrow just one tiny piece would make you not want the whole thing anymore. especially if we got what we really wanted. Grant, you love Marie with all your heart and soul. If the only way to get her was to have sex with someone else, would you want me to do that? Would you say no, knowing how much you loved her? I don't think you would like it, but you would do anything for your daughter. You've said it many times. Same thing with Brandy. Same damn person, same damn situation. Whether you want to believe it or not, Brandy is your daughter. I still maintain this. You took care of her all her short life. As for who created it, I had sex with both of you. Another thing is the legality of the situation. Grant, I know you're hurt, but you are legally responsible for our daughter. I think in your pain you forget that she was born that evening. After you helped her to be born and cut the umbilical cord yourself, you must have been so happy that you forgot something. While you were jumping around, shaking people's hands, and telling them your name was Daddy, you signed her birth certificate. In the eyes of the law, as in mine, you are her father. I'm not trying to trick you into anything, Grant. I'm trying to show you who you are. I have told you before that you will love her as much as you love your other daughters, and I am willing to risk my happiness and part of my life to prove it to you. Always remember, Grant, that I love you more than anything in this world. If I'm not with you, it will hurt me a lot, but like you, I'm ready to sacrifice everything for my children. I just hope the old saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder, applies to us too. She captioned it, yours forever, Bonnie. I had no idea what the hell she was talking about. In a couple of months, we will divorce, and I or she will probably take custody of our two daughters. This will be decided by the court. At least that's what I thought. My heart missed Bonnie, but my pride wouldn't allow me to forgive. Reading her letter may have softened my feelings towards her, but I was still not ready to forgive her. On the other hand, I was ready to find that asshole Denny and beat his ass for running away from Marie. All this was forgotten when the phone rang. It was the damn hospital again. It must have been Bonnie calling me from the hospital and asking if I had read her damn letter or not. What? I said into the phone. Grant, you need to come here now, Bonnie's mother, Mary, said. Jim had a heart attack and Brandy is in trouble, she said. Brandy isn't my damn problem, I thought. I couldn't be more wrong. When I got to the hospital, two nurses grabbed me and tried to pull me in different directions. First, a large black woman tried to drag me into the pediatrician's office. She had an angry expression on her face. She was scary as hell, and for a while, I thought I was going to have to deal with this bitch. The other nurse was from the cardiology department and was equally plump. She just had a kinder expression on her face. She eventually won after they talked about which need was more pressing. I hate deadbeat fathers, the black woman said as she released me. I promise I will come and pay you whatever I owe you or sign the papers so my medical can take care of it, I said. Until the divorce happens, I know it's my problem. She looked at me with an expression that said she had no idea what the hell I was talking about and walked away. I walked into the cardiology department and saw Jim. His heart attack was actually mild. Mary was next to him. He'll be down for a while, she said. I'm very sorry, but I can't help you. But my husband has to come first. Don't worry about it, Mary, I said. If there is anything I can do to help you, let me know. I can handle my girls easily. I've done this before. And while Bonnie was pregnant, I still got used to doing most of it. I just need to make a schedule. Besides, if there's a problem, I can always call Bonnie if I need to. Mary looked at me and said, Nobody told you. What didn't anyone tell me? I asked. Then the doctor came and picked up Mary and took her away to talk about caring for Jim. I decided to go and find Bonnie to talk to her. Perhaps she could tell me what's going on. But then I had no intention of dealing with our problems or hers. When I walked outside, the big angry nurse grabbed me by the arm and led me to the pediatric office. We've been calling you all day, she snapped. I know your wife's disappearance is taking a toll on your family, but you still have responsibilities. I had no idea what she was talking about. She gave me a couple of papers to sign and put me in a wheelchair. She then placed the baby in my arms, and they pushed me toward the door. "You're lucky we're so busy today," she snapped. "When you didn't come to get her this morning like you were supposed to, we should have called the Family Services Agency and had you arrested. What kind of idiot abandons a newborn?" I sat in the wheelchair with the most surprised expression on my face. If Brenda hadn't walked by, I might still be sitting there. "Mom told me to help you," Brenda said. "Dad will stay here for a couple of days and then go home. He will have some restrictions in terms of diet and exercise, but he will be fine. She's more worried about you." Brenda looked at me, sitting in a wheelchair, and smiled. She called one of her mom's friends. He was looking forward to meeting Jim. She asked him to drive her car to my house and immediately drive him back. For some reason I still can't figure out. He didn't grumble at all. I guess the thought of being in a car in close quarters with an attractive woman like Brenda was a reward in itself. "Here, Brenda, why don't you take this?" I said, pointing to the child. "Oh no," she said. "I have no maternal instinct. I probably would have broken it. You are the one who should be the super dad. You can handle it. Besides, there's something really weird going on here." We walked out to my Mustang, and I carefully got into it. I had to look around the house for the new car seat we bought for the baby. As we pulled out of the parking lot and stopped at a red light, Brenda looked at me. "It's the weirdest damn thing," she said. "What?" I asked. "She's quiet and calm," Brenda said. "I visited her every day since she was born. I have never seen this child quiet. Are you sure they gave you the right one?" "Don't start," I said. "I will only keep this thing until your sister returns, wherever she goes. In the meantime, I intend to continue with my divorce plans and may be able to prosecute her for running away and leaving it behind." "Uh-huh," she said. "I'm serious, Brenda. This is bullshit," I spat. "Uh-huh," she said. "Uh-huh, my ass," I said. "I'll unload this thing as soon as I can. I'm giving her 2 days to get her ass back here. Then I will take this thing to social services and explain the situation to them. They can find her a home or foster parents or something like that." "Yeah," Brenda said as we pulled up in front of my house. "Do you need something?" she asked. "No," I spat. "We bought formula on her birthday and haven't opened it yet. Your sister is a supermom. We have everything we need." "Grant, you're a great guy," she said. "What Bonnie did was completely wrong. I completely disagree with what she did. But I know she's torn over losing you. I think in some ways she likes being a mom, but she started to resent this child. That's why she left. She needs to get her head in order. It wasn't good for the child when Mom blamed her for ruining your family. Please don't put this on her. She's just a child. You can just wait and work out your problems with Bonnie when she gets back." I looked at her and realized that she was right. I nodded my head. "Grant," Brenda said, grabbing my face. This was the first time I remember her touching anyone. "What I said earlier about you being the only one with whom she was calm, I meant it. She wasn't even that peaceful when Bonnie was holding her. Maybe she already felt that her mother was not treating her too well. You're the best person I know, Grant. Let my niece feel it. You don't have to accept her as your child. But she is connected to you. Marie is still yours, isn't it?" I nodded my head. "Of course she is," I muttered. "Well, just accept Brandy as Marie and Tara's half-sister, if not as your daughter. Think of her as their cousin or something. She may not be yours, but she is part of your family." I nodded reluctantly. "I loved her so much." "Brenda," I said sadly. "Grant, she still loves you. She didn't give up on you at all, and she won't leave with anyone. For her, there is only you," she said. She was about to say something else, but we were interrupted. The girls ran out of the house excited. They were so busy looking at and caressing the baby that they didn't even notice that their mother wasn't there. I felt that difficult times lay ahead of me. I walked along the once familiar corridors with a very gloomy expression on my face. This expression was not out of respect for the place in which I found myself. My heart was breaking. I felt like I was being torn in two. I missed Grant so much that I wanted to die. This was one of my options, and it was still being discussed. If this plan didn't work, I still might. I once expected to live my life within these walls. I think I wanted to become a teacher back then, but that was over 10 years ago, so I could be wrong. "Bonnie, it's so nice to see you again," said Reverend Mother Agnes. She was Agnes's sister when I was here, and she was old then. She's definitely old now. Looking at her face, I could still see the smiling face of a woman from that time, but now she was much more serious. She also had strength that was not based on the physical body. Her body may be failing her, but her emotional and spiritual strength must have at least doubled. "I'm glad to see you again, Mother Agnes," I said. "Bonnie, you will come here as a lay worker to help us. There is no need to comply with formalities. You are no longer part of the order, but we are still friends. You can just call me Agnes." We spent a few more minutes discussing what I would be doing on order over the next few months. My stay here was indefinite. I signed up to help install a computer system at the monastery. It could literally take years to drag them kicking and screaming out of the dark ages. I hoped it wouldn't take me long to get home. Every minute spent away from my family was torture, but it would be worth anything just to have us together. All the solutions that Grant came up with in connection with my betrayal were unacceptable. After he found out what I did, I started thinking about solutions myself, and none of them turned out to be good. I even considered the idea of putting Brandy up for adoption. Oddly enough, this was not Grant's idea, and I knew why. He and I both firmly believed that a child needs parents. Even one parent is better than none. So since he didn't want to be her father, he never expected me to give her up. Although Grant was being stupid because I love all my daughters, as much as I love Brandy, if I had to choose between her and my husband, she would lose. I would not abandon her. I would make sure that she was placed in a good family, maybe even in a family that would be related to us. But I simply did not have the opportunity to take my girl's father from them. Then there were my own selfish needs for Grant. Alone in my room, I pulled out my iPad. The monastery did not yet have a Wi-Fi network, so I had to use it over a 3G network. I lightly touched the app and my screen filled with a grid of square windows. There were 6 squares in the grid. I touched one and it filled the entire screen. I started to cry quietly looking at this. I turned up the volume as I watched Grant sitting in a rocking chair by our fireplace. He held Brandy and rocked her to sleep. It is not surprising to me that she remained silent towards Grant. He has such an approach to children. I watched as Marie came in and sat down next to him. This girl followed her father around like a puppy. I had no way to separate them. I really have a feeling that if given a choice, my 14-year-old daughter would choose to stay with her father after the divorce. Grant handed the baby to his older sister so he could get out of the rocking chair. She handed it back when he stood up and followed him into our bedroom. He put her to bed and stayed there with Marie next to him until she fell asleep. He then went to the girl's room and read Tara a bedtime story. Marie kept looking at something in her hands. I couldn't believe it. Grant bought Marie a cell phone. He knew I didn't want our kids to become phone addicts. She was only 14. I calmed down and smiled. I was sure he was just giving them something to distract them from their regrets over my absence. Tara is still afraid of the dark. However, when Marie is in the room with her, this is not a problem. Grant put the night light next to her bed. What a weakling. Tara seemed to have a few new toys too. I hoped he would get over his anger at me before the girls took over the house completely. Over the next few months, I ordered and installed computers in the monastery. I taught classes and taught the nuns basic computer skills. I also taught them how to use basic types of computer software. I connected the monastery to the internet and set up a network for small businesses. I threw myself into my work, and at the end of each day, I returned to my room and did my favorite thing, watching my family. As I expected, Grant took care of our daughters even better than I expected. Contrary to everything he said, a bond developed between Grant and our youngest daughter. Tears rolled down my cheeks as he walked through the living room, cradling the baby in his arms as she went through the pain of teething. He gave her pieces of ice, just like he gave Tara. What hurt me the most was that he started talking to the baby when he walked her every night. He told her all about her sisters when they were younger and how she would grow up to be as smart and beautiful as them. He then started talking about his relationship with me and his courtship. I couldn't tell if he was saying these things to the little girl because he actually expected her to understand them, or if he was just saying these things to deal with his own demons. He talked about how much he loved me and how much I meant to him. I was everything to him. It hurt me to hear him say that and constantly use the past tense. Hearing how he really felt about what I did hurt me even more. After that night, I didn't see him for several days and couldn't work because I was too depressed and resentful. Then I began to understand how much what I did had hurt him. I began to wonder, not for the first time, if what I had done was really worth what I was going through now. I also began to doubt the success of my plan. I was no longer sure that my husband would ever want me back. My sister visited my family regularly and seemed to be growing closer to Grant. This was something I didn't plan for. In fact, things didn't go according to my plan. I expected it to take no more than 2 or 3 months. The year was approaching. There have been several things over the past 11 months that I have considered triumphs. One of them happened when my father was recovering from a heart attack. My mother offered to take Brandy with her, but Grant refused. He told her that she had enough problems with her father's health. He'll hold out until I get back. I was sure that his feelings for our daughter were growing. Denny had a habit of recording some of his dates. I took the DVD from him. I didn't want anyone to know what I did. Anyway, one evening I overheard Grant telling Brenda that he was sure I had been cheating on him for weeks, maybe years, and that I was probably back in slut mode. It hurt me that he thought I could do this to him. Brenda was the only one who knew where I was. I called my sister and told her to leave the DVDs somewhere so Grant could find them. Brenda asked Grant if she could look through my clothes for something to wear while she helped him do the housework. As he and Grant looked through the drawer, trying to find a sweatshirt for her, Grant discovered DVDs. I knew it was risky to let Grant see another man have sex with me. If he takes it the wrong way, I may never get him back. But I also knew that if he didn't deal with the idea that I had sex with Denny for pleasure, I still wouldn't be able to get him back. I watched the video through hidden cameras with Grant, watching his reaction. I hoped the video would help Grant through the pain. Watching his reaction, I couldn't understand. A few weeks later, Brenda returned and asked Grant again how he felt about me. For the first time since this started, he didn't respond in anger. He just said he didn't know. I was happier than I had been since I left home. A few nights later, I almost had a heart attack. Grant, as usual, held Brandy while he and the girls watched TV. Brandy made the usual baby cooing sounds, spit out the bottle, and clearly said, "Dada." Marie and Tara smiled and laughed. Grant looked angry at first and glared at the child. She looked straight at him and repeated it, smiling, "Dada." Grant just shook his head and handed the bottle back to her. A few days after this, something else happened. Grant asked Brenda to look after the girls for him for the evening. She agreed, but asked him where he was going. He just told her he was leaving. This worried me because if he started dating, there would be a big chance that I would lose him. I only had a few months left in our state before Grant could divorce me, so I couldn't risk him dating. I went to the bar to have a drink. Okay, it wasn't an accident. I chose this particular place and this particular time for a reason. I did some research and found out who this Denny guy was. He was local trash. He wasn't exactly a criminal. He was just a lazy, good-for-nothing scumbag who got lucky and married a rich older woman. His wife controlled everything in the relationship, but Denny still had time and money to have fun. This was the bar he loved to hang out at. I came here looking for answers. He had several friends to whom he liked to brag about his exploits. He was already serving when I sat down at the bar near his table. He was bragging about some dancer he was supposedly with. I joined the conversation as if I were one of his old friends. "Dude, you've moved up in the world," I said. "Denny, I've been out of town for about a year. I went to Cali. You should take a look at the girls I brought with me." My use of his name really made him think he knew me. "California, huh?" he asked. "Maybe we should get together." "I'm not sure you can handle it," I laughed. "Last time I was here, you snuck off with some stocky girl." "Oh, please," he said. "These older married women are a real challenge. Seducing some young girl is fine, but when you are being chased by a larger, older, married woman, then you realize that you are something." I nodded my head as if I almost believed him, but needed convincing. I leaned over and told him to meet me in the parking lot so we could talk. Of course, his friends wanted to come, but I told them that if he vouched for them after we met the girls, then maybe we could bring them next time. They even paid for my beer. Denny and I headed out to the parking lot with big smiles on our faces. He was grinning because of his addiction, and in anticipation of what he thought was about to happen to him. I smiled because of what was about to happen to him, too. "Let me set the stage for you. Danny is a pretty big guy, even bigger than me, but his wife tamed him to a large extent. He looked like those toothless old tigers at the zoo. He looked intimidating to guys who were smaller than him and more domesticated. But like those tigers from the zoo, when they were released into the wild, many of them refused to leave the cage." We walked into the parking lot, and I sat on the hood of Denny's M3. "Tell me what happened to the chunky chick from last year," I snapped. Denny loved telling his little stories to his friends, so he got right to it. "I really liked this bitch," he began. "I had the feeling that I knew her from somewhere, like we went to school together or something. It was like she already knew me and always wanted a big piece of Denny for herself." He laughed at his own joke and then noticed that I wasn't laughing. "She actually begged me for sex. We must have had sex for at least a couple of hours straight. She even came back a second time, so she must have liked what she got." "So are you still entertaining her?" I asked. "Hell no," he snapped. "I try to be careful, especially with married people. This bitch wanted to leave her husband for me." He was just drawing in a breath to say something else when I hit him. My first blow stunned him, and he staggered back. "What the hell?" he started as I hit him again. This time my hand touched something harder and blood poured out of his face. "You broke my nose," he shouted. "If you don't tell me the truth, I'll break something else for you," I said. "What do you want to know?" he asked, spitting out blood. I smiled as he moved away from me. He had no courage at all. At that moment, my hatred for Denny turned to pity. I also abandoned my original plan to tell his wife what he had done. If this information gets out, it can only harm my girls, especially Marie. We would all be better off if none of this came out. "The truth," I said. "Tell me everything. Don't hold anything back. You never know what might make me start hitting you again. I'm not one of your friends, so there's no point in trying to make yourself look good. Just tell me the truth." "Okay, the truth is, I was shocked when she approached me. Half the women here don't fall for my chatter anymore. So when this woman approached me, I didn't care that she was a little overweight. She was beautiful. And she had big tits. It was free sex. Why refuse a gift from fate? But the sex was terrible. Hell, she didn't even take her clothes off. She acted like she didn't want me to touch her at all, and after all, she showered me with insults." He looked at me, waiting for a reaction. "I was sure I would never see her again," he continued. "But a few weeks later, she came for me again. I thought maybe the last time was bad timing, or she wasn't in the mood. But the second time, it was even worse. She didn't even move. There was an expression on her face as if she hated me. I swear I knew her from somewhere. I just couldn't remember. The look on her face was so hateful that I simply told her that this would be the last time we met. I had a feeling that she just hated all men in general or me in particular. He wiped the blood from his broken nose and looked at me. She really looked like she was ashamed of herself or wanted to cry. Both times, as soon as we finished, I'm telling you, she had tears in her eyes. If I didn't know better, I would have thought she was having sex with me to punish herself for something. I'm sure she was married because she kept mentioning him. It was weird as hell too. Most married women I've slept with never talk about their husbands. He shook his head. Life is strange, and people are really complicated. He looked at me as if he had just said something very profound. Get out of my sight, Denny, I said. I had a lot to think about. I parked a couple blocks away in case of trouble. Denny turned out to be much more cowardly than I expected. He didn't even try to hit me even once. He didn't resist. He just started pouring out everything that was in his heart. I felt bad about all this. In fact, I felt terrible. Danny was an asshole, that's obvious. But this is not a reason for me to lose my temper and resort to violence. What if I got caught? What would my girls do if I ended up in prison? Besides me, who loved them? Their Aunt Brenda was not the motherly type at all. Their grandparents loved them, but were simply too old to care for them. There was only me. Of course Bonnie loved them too, but where was she? Talking to Denny actually made me see things in a different light. It was so damn difficult. In life, not everything is so simple, black and white. There are many shades of gray. The hum of my Mustang's engine only made me rethink my situation even more. There were a lot of questions here. Some of them were stupid. Did Bonnie cheat on me? Yes, damn it, I did. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was right in everything I said. She changed. Did her reasons make sense? Hell no, they didn't. Everything was fine with us. We could have ended up having a baby ourselves, but she decided to ruin everything. On the other hand, none of us were getting any younger, especially not her. If we had waited for eventually, it might never have happened. Although I hate to admit it, maybe the way she did it was completely wrong, but there was a reason why she did it. I would have liked it much more if we had talked about it and then turned to artificial insemination or some medical procedure. The remaining questions were much more confusing. Do I think Bonnie loves me? I was still absolutely sure that yes. Even that asshole Denny seemed convinced that she loved me. Do I still love Bonnie? How much I want to jump up and say, hell no, I hate that cheater. I can't. She was away for almost a year. Brandy began to talk and try to walk. I haven't been on a single date and haven't planned to. But every day and every night I thought about where she was. I'm sure she found someone else and moved on from me and my daughters. But sometimes I thought it would be great to find a way to work things out. Most of all, I told myself that I wished this had never happened. But to be honest, I'm no longer sure that this is true. If none of this had happened, I wouldn't have Brandy, and there's no point in pretending that I don't love this girl. I love her at least as much as the other two. I'm as much, if not more, a father to her than that asshole Denny. He was not the one she looked at, made eye contact with, and called Dada. This was me, and if I get my way, it will always be this way. My time in the monastery taught me many things I never expected to learn. Before I had even been here a week, I was approached to buy beer, pills, and other things for some newbies. Obviously, the modern era has come to the nuns. During my time here, women in need of such things would not even attempt to enter the Lord's service. Apparently, church rules about such things as abstinence and chastity have also fallen by the wayside. That night, I cried myself to sleep again. I couldn't even look at my family. I began to realize more and more that Grant would probably never get over his hatred of what I had done. It was enough for me that he, at least outwardly, accepted my daughter. He may not have laid claim to her, but even to me, who only watched them on video, it was obvious that he loved her. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my cell phone ringing. It rang 4 times and then stopped before the voicemail could hear it. Then it rang 4 more times. Someone really wanted to talk to me. I picked up the phone and answered sleepily. "Hi," I croaked. "Bonnie, get your ass home now," my sister Brenda said. "Why?" I asked. "Grant left last night," she said. "This won't work," I said. "If he's dating now, that's another reason to stay away. He's probably already forgotten me and is trying to move on." "No," she snapped. "Can I tell you what I think happened before you jump to some stupid conclusion? You've already made one stupid decision that almost ruined your life. Are you ready to listen this time?" I really didn't like the way she talked to me, but Brenda had never been a social person. Maybe that's why she was a model. She had no human feelings and was really just a mannequin to hang clothes on. "Go ahead," I said. "For the first time since you left, Grant wanted to go out last night. We tried many times to persuade him to go somewhere, but he never did. I was a little jealous at first," she said. "I always thought that if you never got together again, maybe I'd give Grant a chance. He's a really good guy." I couldn't believe my own sister was saying that. I was a little angry, but tried not to show it. "Anyway, he came out," she continued, "and his date only lasted about 45 minutes. "Well, maybe they just weren't right for a first date," I said. "But if he starts dating, sooner or later he will find someone. There aren't many women stupid enough to let him go." "Can I tell a story or something?" Brenda asked. "Sorry," I said. "When he got home, I noticed his hands looked like he'd been in a fight," she said. My sharp intake of breath made her laugh. "You still love him," she said, laughing. "Of course I do," I answered sharply. "In all of this, there was never a question of whether I loved him. I will love Grant until everything is over, and maybe even after that. Go ahead, keep going." So I asked him about it, and he said he fell. He's a really bad liar, isn't he? Who uses their fists to catch themselves when they fall. But he didn't want to talk about it, so I didn't press it. This morning, one of my friends told me that his old friend Denny was badly beaten. His lips were swollen so that they looked like a ball, and his nose was broken. I went into the house again early in the morning so that the girls could help prepare me breakfast. I am their only female role model since their mother abandoned them. "What choice did I have, Brenda?" I said. I started crying. So, we sat down at the table. Marie said a prayer, as always, and Grant added your name at the end. Marie made a mocking face. Tara just thought about it. After breakfast, I asked Grant why he did it, and he said he's been thinking about you a lot lately. So I asked him if that's why he started dating. He just smiled and said he didn't think he'd ever really look for someone to replace you. That's for him. It's just not interesting. I asked him if he still loved you. For the first time since you left, he wasn't angry. He just said that he loved you with all his heart, and that what he regretted most about this whole situation was that he never talked to you about all this before you left. But he hopes you're happy, wherever you are and whoever you're with. But he didn't send me away, I objected, and I'm with no one but him. So shouldn't you go home and tell him that? She asked. I didn't answer her. I grabbed my bag and keys and ran out to the car, clutching my phone. I didn't waste time getting ready or changing clothes. I just ran out to the car in my long flannel night robe. Surprisingly, none of the men I saw at gas stations along the way even noticed that anything was wrong or said a word. It was always women and girls who pointed at me and laughed. My phone rang again. I looked at the screen and saw that it was Brenda again. I answered. "Well, have you thought about what I asked?" she asked sharply. "Let's say I'm seriously considering it," I laughed. "Great," she said. "You can be crazy sometimes, but you're still a great sister, and I think you both need each other. And you may be a soulless dummy with a completely flat ass, but you are the best sister in the world," I said. Then I hung up and concentrated on driving. We were late home that evening. After all the drama we went through on the way to school and daycare this morning, I decided we needed a little treat. The drama had nothing to do with the girls. It was because of me when I mentioned their mom. So we stopped at McDonald's for dinner. I thought we'd be sitting in front of the TV, eating treats and bonding. This idea seemed doomed, because as soon as Marie got into the car and hugged me, she started again. "Why did you mention her, Dad? She left us. We don't need her," she said. "Marie, dear, there is a difference between the words love and need," I said. "I think I understand why you're confused. You're going through the same thing as me. At first, I was really hurt by what she did. I don't know why she did it, but she did it. After I found out about it, maybe I didn't handle it as well as I could have. I think your mom just felt like she was backed into a corner and had nowhere to go. So she just went away to think about it." Marie didn't really know all the circumstances. She and the other girls were too young for that. All she knew was that her mother had disappeared. "No, Dad," Marie answered sharply. "She ran away. All these stories about taking responsibility for your actions. But when it was her turn, she ran away. She left you and me and Tara, even Brandy." "You're right about that," said Tara, who had just gotten into the car. We continued talking about it all the way to the daycare center where we picked Brandy up. Then we talked about it all the way to McDonald's. Then, as usual, other questions arose. For example, Tara, who tried to imitate her older sister. Tara decided that since Marie spent so much time on her phone, she, at 10 years old, needed a phone too. This was the main topic of discussion when we entered our house. "Tara, you're only 10, Marie said. Daddy won't buy you an iPhone. You're still little." "No," Tara said. "Look at the trend. When Dad was young, no one had a cell phone until they were 20 and got a job. You got a phone when you were 14. I need a phone now, and I'm 10. Brandy will get a phone when it'll be 5, and she'll be going to school. That way she can call Daddy if her applesauce is too cold or someone says something mean to her." Tara was so caught up in her argument that she didn't even notice, unlike the rest of us. Marie was holding bags of food. She immediately dropped them, and her mouth fell open in surprise. Tara turned around to see what made her sister drop her food. I held the hand of tiny Brandy, who slowly took a few hesitant steps. Now that she understood the general principle of walking, she wanted to walk all the time unless she was tired or afraid. When she saw Bonnie coming out of the bedroom, Brandy immediately reached out to me. Marie stood with her mouth open in surprise and anger on her face. "Hey, Mom, don't I deserve an iPhone?" Tara asked without missing a beat. "What does your dad say?" Bonnie asked as she walked past her. She walked straight towards Brandy. "Can I hold her?" she asked, reaching out to her. Brandy didn't want that. She screamed "Daddy" and began to cry even as Bonnie's hands moved closer to her. Bonnie stepped away from Brandy, who calmed down when I picked her up. "Why are you here? Have you forgotten something?" Marie asked. I watched Bonnie's face as she answered. "I missed you girls, and I missed your daddy," she said slowly and calmly. "And someone told me that maybe your dad isn't so mad at me after all." "You should have stayed away forever," Marie said as she walked away. "So I'm getting my iPhone?" Tara asked. I took the food and took the bags to the girls' room. Marie found them a movie to watch while they ate, and I promised her we'd talk later. I walked back into the living room with Brandy in my arms as usual. She was starting to fall asleep, and it was around the time I used to walk around the living room with her, talking to her until she fell asleep. "Wow, you feel like you're at home," I said to Bonnie. Her eyes sparkled, and she smiled at me. "Actually, this is what I was wearing when I talked to my sister on the phone this morning. I jumped out and came here right away. I didn't even bother changing or getting ready. When she said maybe you and I can talk, that was enough," Bonnie said. "Is there someone you should call or something?" I asked. This brought another smile from her. She sat back on the couch and just watched as I began to walk around the living room, cradling Brandy in my arms. "You're not very sophisticated," she said. There's no one I should call who would be more important than talking to you. Well, I could probably call the abbess of the monastery I worked at, but I'm sure she'll understand. She's told me more than once over the past 11 months, 2 weeks and 3 days, that I need to come home and face my problems instead of running away from them. Grant, there are no other men in my life except you. There never have been and there never will be. She continued to just look at me. Why are you looking at me like that? I asked. Because I missed you so much. Fool, she said. And because I've watched you do this every night for the last 11 months. You're the best father anyone could have. What do you mean? I asked. You were imagining how I took care of Danny's baby. I was angry again. Grant, she's not Denny's baby, she said. She's your child. She's even afraid of me now. It will take her some time to get used to me. She is attached to you. You are her father. You are her dad. I was there when she first said it. No, that's not true, I said. Yes, I was, she said. She walked over to the bookshelf and took one of the stands from the middle shelf. Camera, she said. I have several of them throughout the house. I wasn't really here with the people I love, but I wasn't very far away. So you were spying on us, I said. Grant, call it what you want, but I couldn't live without you. I needed to see you, even if I couldn't be with you. What if there was an accident or emergency and you needed me? What if some woman tried to come into your life? I needed to know what was going on with you and the girls, she said. You did better without me than I could have imagined. Of course, the girls hugged you, especially Marie. Oh my God, Grant, you bought her a cell phone for $300 when she was 14. Is it any wonder Tara thinks she can get it now? She stood up and slowly walked towards me. You can probably kick me out of the house if you want, but you should know that I was right all along. I hate what it took to prove this to you. It took us a whole year of our lives to make you see what you always knew in your heart. She shook her head. This was all my fault, Grant. I was damn wrong. I just had an idea in my head, and I never thought about how you would feel about it. All I thought was how great it would be. I just kept imagining you holding me as our baby grew in my belly. It became an obsession. After a while, I couldn't think about anything else. How I got there didn't seem to matter anymore. In the back of my mind, I always imagined that it wasn't Denny who got me pregnant. I think after some time, there was no need to even pretend anymore. I sincerely believed in my heart that this was your child. She stood next to me and walked next to me while Brandy snored on my shoulder. What I did to you was terrible, she said. I deceived you, I cheated on you, and I lied to you. I swear to you, I will never do this again. I just want to be with my family again. I know that I need to earn their trust and their love over and over again. But all I can do is try, if you give me a chance. So now we know why you're here, I said. Why did you think I was here? She asked. I guess I thought you were coming for your baby, I said. When you left, we were discussing divorce and me trying to get custody of my two. I didn't want anything to do with you or Brandy. I remember, she said. If I offered to give her up for adoption, would you take me back? I think I was already sure then that the child should be with his mother, I said. So you and she both had to leave. I thought you and her should just leave and I'll get custody of my girls. Or you get custody and I get visitation rights and visit my girls as often as I legally could. What if I offer to take her from your hands right now? She asked. I would throw you out of the house and see you in court, I said. You left her. Oh my God, Grant, she said. I was just talking. It never occurred to me to try to take her away from you. Not that I could. That's not why I came back. Then why did you come back? I asked her. Grant, damn it, I came back for you. I'm back because I root for you every damn night. I came back because I love the way you smile at me every time I walk into the room with my fat ass. I came back because I want to grow old with you. You already know the part where I wanted to have children with you. I came back because I can't live without you, and whatever it takes to get you to forgive me, I will do it. That's why I came back. You'll have to convince the girls, though, I told her. We're a package deal. It won't be easy for Marie, she said. I can't believe my child is looking at me like that. But you know that she loved you from the first moment she saw you. I think what she resents most are the years you were away from us. So you think that Tara will be easier for you to convince? I asked her. Oh yes, she said. You let me spend the day with her at Best Buy and Tara will forgive me. It will be more difficult with the other two, she said. Marie is already upset that I'm back and Brandy doesn't know me. She's a year old, starting to walk and talk, and she's never seen me. She will always choose you over me. I shrugged. And, of course, there is the most important thing, she said. I looked at her with curiosity. You stupid person, she said. I would never have done any of this if I knew there was a chance of losing you. I love you so much that I'm just dying to get naked from you right now. That probably won't happen for a long time, I said. I need to think about the children. I can't just let a strange woman into my life. What example would I set? But it will happen eventually, right? She asked. I don't know, I said. I've been on a few dates. Many eligible ladies are interested in me. Are you talking about my sister or Danny? She asked. You know, you didn't have to beat him up. I left you the DVD so you can see what happened. You know I didn't like it, and that I told you the truth that I only did it to get pregnant. I don't care if he tells all his friends that I'm a slut, as long as you know the truth. I love you, Grant, she said. Much more than you will ever know. I love you too, Bonnie, I said. And I missed you. Then can you forgive me? She asked. Please, I promise I will fix this, and it will never happen again. I forgave you a long time ago, I said, but I'm just not sure I'll ever get over the betrayal. We can try. I'm ready, but we'll have to take it one day at a time. I can't promise you that we'll always be together, or even that things will work out in the short term, but I'll try. And that's what we did. We crawled before we started walking. We started with Bonnie living with Brenda. We went on a few dates, and then she started coming to our house. After being away for a year, her first encounters with the girls were terrible. They looked at me to confirm everything she was saying. If Bonnie said she would take the girls shopping, they would look at me or just ask me in front of her if it was okay. Marie softened quicker than we expected when she saw that Bonnie was really trying. The problem was Tara. She didn't trust Bonnie at all. She often peppered her answers and comments with things like, "How long before she runs away again?" Or the ever-popular, "I don't have to listen to you. You're not my dad." Fortunately, children are resilient. Brandy overcame her fear of Bonnie and would often crawl into her lap if I was busy or not around. We slowly restored her relationship with the girls. It would be years, not months, before we could look back and say that the relationship between Bonnie and the girls was the same as before she left. And our relationship developed just as slowly. I have to admit that there were times when I thought that nothing would work out for us. I remember several times when I was so angry with her that I just screamed and asked her why the hell it was so important to her. Many families have experienced divorce and dealt with it. She just calmly looked at me and said that she had already seen what it was like to spend a year without me. At least I had girls who gave me all the love and attention I needed. During our separation, she only had time to think about what she had done and what it almost cost her. She would face anything but this again. There were small steps along the way. There were some strange things in our relationship. Bonnie didn't have much money. She saved most of the money she earned at the monastery, but they didn't pay much beyond room and board, so she was soon left without money, and I had to give her some. She could get a job, and we discussed it, but I decided that I would prefer her to take care of the house. I may have been a super dad, but I was a bad housewife. This also brought some confusion and pain. When she took over running the household, Bonnie made two very bad assumptions, none of which we were prepared to accept. She assumed that running a household meant she would live here, but that wasn't the case, and she suggested that I would pick Brandy up from daycare and she would watch her during the day. That didn't mean that either. However, there were some good moments in addition to the bad ones. The first touch of her hand was again frightening in its intensity. Our first hug, the first time she pressed her body against mine. On my birthday, we kissed again for the first time. The girls threw me a party at the local water park. We spent the whole day in swimsuits, splashing in the cold water in the summer heat. Then we had dinner at my favorite restaurant. When we returned home, the girls were exhausted. I had to carry Tara out of the car. Soon Brandy was snoring too. Bonnie and I sat on the couch while my exhausted 15-year-old daughter sat between us, texting one of her friends. When Bonnie went to get something to drink, Marie whispered something in my ear. "Be careful, Daddy. She looks at you strangely. I think she's going to try something," she said. Bonnie came back and sat next to me with Marie on the other side. Marie also fell asleep, and I carried her to the room. When I returned, Bonnie was still lying on the couch. Then I noticed what she did when she got her drink. She took off her bra. "I have another birthday present for you," she said, and she pressed herself close to me. When she kissed me, it was like I was taken apart and made whole again. Our lips eagerly attacked each other. Our mouths opened, and her tongue was as sweet as ever. She leaned back and pulled me towards her. "I miss you so much," she hissed. When we heard this, she had already begun to pull on her shirt. Marie's angry voice came from behind my shoulder. "Then you probably shouldn't have left him," she snapped. "I'm really sorry I did that, baby," Bonnie said. "I'll never do that again." We didn't do anything else that night, not even kissed goodnight. Marie stayed with us all the time and refused to go to bed. Bonnie thought it was cute. "She protects you," she laughed. For the next few weeks, Marie did not leave us alone. After a while, she reluctantly allowed him to hug and then kiss. Then, seeing that we were walking around holding hands all the time, she talked to Bonnie, and after that everything seemed to be fine. When I asked Bonnie about this, she shook her head. "We talked," she said. "And what?" I asked. "She said she would give me another chance." "But only one," Bonnie said. "She told me I was getting old and I needed to think about my future." "You mean she thinks you should move back in with me?" I asked. "No," Bonnie said. "She told me that if I ever hurt you again, I wouldn't do it." A few nights later, Bonnie found herself in our bed. We had to be very careful not to wake the girls, but it was hard. I don't remember how it started. I just remember her turning around, and the next thing I knew, we were kissing like we'd never stop. Then we both knew we were back together. "I love you, Grant. Always have and always will," she said. "I'll never leave you again." Then she grabbed the blanket, snuggled up to me, and fell asleep. The next morning, the girls were surprised that Bonnie came so early. "She's not here early, Tara," Marie said. "She stayed the night." "She didn't go home?" asked Tara. "No, Tara," Marie said in an irritated voice. "She's home now." The girls continued going about their business. Over the years, we became a family again. Now it's just the three of us. Marie practices law in Chicago. Tara is married and lives with her husband in Atlanta, and Brandy is a computer engineering student at the University of Michigan. It was just me, Bonnie, and my new Mustang left with the girls living their lives. We never had children of our own, but we raised three beautiful daughters, and I could not love them more, even if they were mine. I think in the end, the circumstances of Brandy's birth almost destroyed my family, but we learned our lessons and moved on. Bonnie never lied to me again. The risk that we wouldn't succeed was too great, so she learned something. I've learned that sometimes someone can do the wrong thing for the right reasons or the right thing for the wrong reasons. Okay, I'm not expressing this very well, but what it comes down to is, she made a mistake and I forgave her. It was my life and my choice. I let go of all my anger and pride and realized that I love her and always will. I love Brandy too, and always will. I almost made the biggest mistake of my life. If I had forced her out of my life, it would have been much worse. I'd probably be a lonely, cranky old man right now. I wouldn't have had the love of my life by my side, and I wouldn't have had the joy of watching my youngest daughter grow into a truly special woman. I'd be more like Denny. His wife eventually died and left everything she had to charity. He didn't receive a cent. He didn't even get the house. A week after her funeral, he was left homeless. He has been living in a series of homeless shelters for the past 5 years. Now he spends his days wandering the streets and telling anyone who will listen about all the women he has slept with. Last Thanksgiving, the girls and I went out to do some last-minute shopping while Bonnie cooked. Tara stayed home to help her mom, but Brandy and Marie were with me. When we left the store, Denny was sitting outside with a sign that said, "We'll work for food." I took $1 out of my pocket and gave it to him. Marie, as always, was watching me and gave him one too. I could tell she didn't want to get too close to him. He didn't seem to recognize me, and he never saw my daughters. "Thank you, sir," he said. He looked at Marie, and she stepped back even further. "Dad, why did you give money to this homeless man?" Brandy asked. "He'll just spend it on illegal substances or alcohol." "You never know, honey," I said. "This man could be someone's father." "Not mine," Marie answered sharply. "Mine too, thank God," Brandy said. They each grabbed my hand as we got back into my car and drove away. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.